Welcome back to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. I'd just like to invite all the guests right now just to do a big smile for the camera. And now we can stop, because there's not much to smile about in this one, I'm afraid. I'm joined today by Lee, who's been on before. Hello, mate. We've also got Roberto joining us today that I believe a lot of people will know from Twitter. We always get one Twitter star, so Roberto, it's you today.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Yeah, thanks for coming on today, mate. And Gamer Clark headset with his guitar. He's such a cool kid here. Clark, who does a few bits with the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel as well. Clark was the last person we could get because I don't think anyone else wanted to talk about this game. So so here we are, guys. Thanks once again. What a terrible week for Newcastle United. It couldn't get much worse. I think a lot of people will say at least we are safe. I did have written down here that Wednesday might have been a bit of an overreaction. But Lee, I think judging by that performance, there was no overreaction at all. Which was worse? Do you think the feeling after Wednesday getting thrashed by City, or do you think that the way that we threw that away is just unacceptable?
The feeling after Wednesday for me was worse because it shows just how far we've fallen in the past 13 years. Today, definitely a game of two halves. I mean, we were okay first half. I think we looked good. But I think we looked good because Watford was so poor and so passive. Pearson got them in at half time and he's given them a round of whatever you want to call it. And they come out and it was clearly two teams. One team was safe and one team wasn't. And the one team that wasn't wanted it far more in the second half. And I think it showed.
Yeah, it's been tough, really. I mean, City with nothing to play for, but obviously putting in clinical performances on Wednesday. We've got Watford, as you say, who are fighting for survival, and they've taken a massive leap towards that today. The lineup was interesting. The myth that Joe Linton had to start every single game was debunked straight away, so people had to really find a new way to blame him for this one. But we saw the return of some players. Obviously, Alan San-Maximan was in there. Almiron was in there. Roberto, did you think that was quite a positive step for Newcastle, having those players back after what happened in the week?
Absolutely. And I think the difference that you saw with and without them in the game against Manchester City proves that. I think they definitely provide that boost, and that's shown all season. But having said that, looking at what we're going to talk about later, it really shows that there are more than just that. And even them, it's like you can't fault them necessarily for the performances that they had today. But I think if you take them out of the lineup, it's a completely different team. And I think we saw that even in the game against Manchester City, and even in some games this season as well, how different either if one is out or two is out. I mean, it looks like a completely different side.
Yeah, absolutely. Watford are an interesting outfit. They've had a bit of a weird season, Clark. Did you always think that Watford should be doing a lot better than what they currently are?
In terms of the players they've got, probably, yeah, because they've got a lot of very talented players in there, like especially Saar, who was playing against us. I thought he was really good there. And not just like going forward, I thought his work ethic and everything was great. I've got some great players. And I mean, they've shown as well they can beat good teams. I think besides Man City, the only team that have beat Liverpool this season. So I mean, that's something we can, I suppose, think about. But I mean, we still should.
I've got a straw over there if you want to clutch it, by the way, Clark. There's a few straws if you want to just clutch them.
We should have beat them.
We should have beat them, yeah. But I did point out that Watford beat Liverpool by 3 goals to nil. At least we scored. So technically that means we're better than the champions. So there we are. The lineup was interesting. Like I mentioned, no Joe Linton in there, but Dwight Gale was on there, and we'll get onto him. It looks like the type of team that should have been able to respond after the midweek crushing defeat. But it did look like a positive start, didn't it, Lee?
It did, but you say it looked like a positive lineup. It's a positive lineup when you play football the right way. And we didn't play the football the right way. We've got 3 midgets up front. You've got Almiron wide, you've got St-Maximin wide, and you've got Dwight Gale. Now, Dwight Gale will run all day. But did you not notice that the centre halves, Lascelles, Fernandez, and even Shaw to a certain extent, pinging long balls over the top, and nothing's ever going to stick with those 3. It's an attacking lineup if you play the tactics correctly, and he wasn't playing the tactics correctly, and he needs to get that message to the centre halves. It's got to be on the floor. Give it to Shelvey through the lines and what have you, and looking for feet, but to just ping the ball over the top of the midfield, trying to see whether something will stick, was just the wrong tactics.
Yeah. Do you think that the attacking front line that we've got, Roberto, should be doing better? How do you think we should be playing to suit them and maybe see what we did against the likes of Bournemouth?
Well, I think when you look at how all the players are playing in the right position, I think with Amiron, for example, I mean, we saw how initially he was struggling because he was playing on the right, and I've said it, and I think a lot of people have said it, that that's not his strongest position. You want him more out wide or as a number 10 where he's at his strongest factor. So clearly there is something there that has to be functioning properly, even for St. Maximin as well. I mean, you have someone that could work on both sides of the flanks, obviously provides the speed. I mean, definitely needs to demonstrate more of his end product. I mean, we saw that even in the offside goal. But yeah, it's just a weird one, really. I mean, and then you don't have Joelinton in that team, and then all the responsibility goes to Dwight Gale, who obviously did score the goal that he did, but definitely needed to provide much more quality, I would say, up top.
Yeah, we'd like to see it. We'd love to see it. We did see a goal at least from Dwight Gale. Clark, do you think that having him in the squad means that we're always likely to score more than we would with Joelinton?
I think so. I don't think we're likely to play any better with him. I don't think he particularly offers that much in the Premier League besides what we saw today, like a nice little flick on from Fernandes and a poacher's finish, where I don't think Joelinton would be. But I think someone said in the WhatsApp today, I think if Dwight Gale was fit for a season, he'd guarantee about 10 poachers goals a season. Probably wouldn't offer much else, but I mean, where would we be with 10 poacher goals? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we could be in the top half easy.
I guess you could say that Dwight Gale's a bit like our Troy Deeney in that you can always rely on him to get that type of goal. And it was a wonderful flick on by Fernandes. I don't know if you saw that, Lee. It was one of the only moments that we can really shout about it. I mean, the delivery, everything was just brilliant.
It was. I must admit, my initial reaction was he's offside.
Yes, it did.
Immediately, I thought he was offside. But when the replay shows, obviously, he came in late at the back pass, which was great. But one thing my lad pointed out to me about the corner was, it was like, Dad, it's about time we've whipped a corner in. Because for the last couple of weeks, we've had Shelby on corners all the time, and he's just drifted it to the back post, and it's made it easy pickings for the centre-halves. But today we put a couple of whipped corners in, and that made a big difference for me because we put them under a bit of pressure from corners, where previously it's just been easy pickings, as I say, for the centre-halves.
Yeah. Roberto, do you think that we look better from set plays, perhaps? Do you think that's one of the areas that we can really exploit teams with?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you have the aerial threat in the players, like Fernandes, like Lascelles, I think you can definitely work from that. And we definitely saw that in some games. I think the game against West Ham was an obvious example. And, I think with the advantage that they have, it's best to utilize it because, you like you had mentioned, Lee, you have your small midgets in the likes of St. Maximin and Almiron who, aren't exactly tall and are good aerial threats. So you kind of have to obviously utilize the likes of your defense who obviously have been decent enough in scoring from set pieces.
Yeah, the first half did have its moments, but I think that the rot started to set in just before half time, Clark. I mean, The defence just looked all over the place. Lascelles was shouting his head off at Rose. What was going on?
We just seemed we scored quite relatively early on, and I think we just seemed to take the pressure off a little bit and let Watford come onto us. We looked quite passive. Shaw was coming quite deep, sitting alongside Lascelles, where reality he should be trying to sit next to Shelby or try and mop up and give the ball to Shelby to spray some balls around. And we just let them come onto us, and I think that was the thing that clicked on for Watford in the second half. They probably got in at half time and saw that, right, we can get back into this quite easily. And ultimately it ended up being 2 mistakes, but still managed it. That one where Rose fluffed it was a ball over the top and he just looked so casual and just didn't clear his lines. I think it was Sarr put a ball in for Welbeck, and Lascelles did not look happy at all. He was not happy.
Yeah, it's interesting having Lascelles in the team. Lee, do you think that we look a better defensive outfit with Lascelles in there?
Definitely,
or do you think it's just good to have him shouting at the other players?
He's the only natural leader, I think, we've got across the back line. That's been evident since Southampton and the relegation season a few years ago. He barks out instructions, he lets people know where he wants them, and if they're not where he wants them, or if they're not performing, he lets them know, and you need that across the back line. But today they just look very sloppy. I mean, that was the sloppiest I've seen Fernandes look since we came back after lockdown. So many just sort of misplaced passes, just inviting pressure on. If I was moaning about him lumping up top to Gale and Almiron and St Maximin a minute ago, but anytime he tried to play it short, he was just playing it into their midfielders anyway. So, yeah, but to come back to your question, yeah, Lascelles is the leader that we need, and we do see a difference when he's not in the team.
Yeah, it looked so sloppy, and I know we saw it against Man City, but there's this talk of the flip flops being on. But Roberto, I'll have to come to you as the expert with this one. We both mentioned it at the same time on Twitter. Almiron's locker was just full of pace at that point, and he was able to get us out of some tricky situations with that insane run. What is that? Just in his natural ability?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's just the way that he plays. I think one of the criticism that I can give him is that perhaps he's just being too fast. I mean, obviously, you can see him beat all those players that he did on that run, but it's just like, I think it's rushing too much, and perhaps that's kind of one of the reasons why his end product isn't as good as people expected. And I think it's just that. I think it's as long as he's able to, find someone, and this is obviously going to all the players, this isn't just directly to him, but if he can be able to find that right pass and find that player that is able to capitalize and finish, then that would work best. But even for someone like Almiron, I think he obviously is an important player. I think he's very dangerous with the ball and without it as well because of his pace and the technicality that he has. But at the same time, you worry about the way that he can manage himself, and sometimes it doesn't work as much. And we've seen that as well this season, just how sometimes he just rushes too much and maybe needs to it's not a good word to say, but maybe just slow down just a bit, because then that way he's able to see more of the game.
Yep, interesting. Well, we'd like to go to half time now. I think actually on Amazon they've just gone to half time. Actually, we're that far behind. But the second half did start, or it will be starting in about 15 minutes. And we just saw a completely different team come out, Clark. I mean, what happened? What was it?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't actually. I've got no idea what happened. I think we had one good little spell where there was that little interplay between Almiron and Gale, and once again Almiron got a little bit ahead of himself, got himself caught between the headlights, and just didn't know what to do. And I think it was like a nice back heel from Gale or something. But other than that, we just didn't do anything besides the offside goal. We didn't offer anything going forward. We just let them come on to us. I think Shaw and Shelby were very sloppy in midfield. I thought the full-backs had very poor games. I don't know what Manquillo was thinking about with the penalty. I don't know. I thought Richie one was a bit harsh. It was kind of a collision kind of thing, but probably give it.
Well, Clark, we'll get on to the other penalties shortly before we run ahead. I mean, some people are still watching on Amazon, but the first penalty, Lee. I mean, there's a bit of a debate over it. It did get a quick check, but I think it was.
It's a penalty.
Yeah. Did you think Richie came in with too much?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, but it's literally what Richie is. He's 100% committed all the time. Little bit of foresight, he might have not dived in as much as he did, but he was 100% committed, and he's caught his knee and he's took his knee away. I mean, on first looking at it, I didn't think it was a penalty, but the replayers clearly say he's took his knee away from him. I don't think Richie could have done anything differently personally, because his momentum was already there. He was travelling. The lad cut in sharply, and they just came together. It's a penalty. It's a penalty all day.
Yeah, no debate about it. Well, we then saw the collapse, basically. The penalty goes in. You've got a person like Troy Deeney taking it. I mean, that's the first penalty that Newcastle have actually conceded all season. Two come along at once. It's just our luck, isn't it? But we then saw the sloppy passes slip in. I mean, we mentioned Fernandes there, Roberto. Fernandes has been one of the shining lights this season. But what happens when defenders do that? What brings this on?
I mean, it just turns it off. I mean, when something like that happens, and obviously, seeing the equalizer, and you see Watford pressuring much more, it just becomes too much for them. And I think we saw that not just only from Fernandes, but we saw the likes of Manquillo. We even saw that with Lascelles as well. I mean, yes, mentioned that Lascelles is a leader and has worked well for the team, but at times, it just didn't work out well for this side. I think, as Clark mentioned, the team was sloppy. There was no effectiveness going forward, and that just proved, unfortunately, with both the goals that occurred.
Yeah, Clark, it pains me to constantly bring this guy up, but how do you solve a problem like Sharia? No, Fabian Scher. That's just one for the older fans there with the Sound of Music reference. I'm really showing my age. Thank you, Lee, for laughing. But yeah, what's happened to him? What's gone wrong? And what was the position like today?
He's not playing in his position. I'm still.
So where was he playing today? Was it just a central midfielder role? Was he defensive? What?
He was. I don't think he knew. Because at times he was playing alongside Shelby and he was like kind of emulating Shelby a little bit and spraying some nice balls forward to the wingers and stuff. And other times he was dropping next to Lascelles and getting the ball deep when that's exactly what Shelby normally does. So I don't know if the plan was to have Shaw do the Shelby work and have Shelby move a little bit forward, but that didn't happen. And when he's in midfield, it's a lot easier when you're in a back five to come out with the ball and be a ball playing defender, and you see with his goal against Cardiff and his goal against Burnley, you can stride forward because you know that you've got cover behind you and you can take a shot, you can take some people on, you can play a nice pass. But in midfield, I don't think he's aware of his surroundings as much as he would be from like the right side of centre back or something like that. And he's not a midfielder. I rant about it so many times. Ball playing defenders do not equal good ball playing midfielders. Didn't work with Colaccini, doesn't work with Fabian Shaw, didn't really work with David Luiz. Just stop. Just play him centre back.
Sorry, did I just forget when David Luiz played for Newcastle for a second there?
Just in general. It's a general rule for ball playing defenders.
Okay, yeah. I mean, start that campaign on Twitter as soon as we're off here. Yeah. Stop putting them in the wrong positions. Central midfield is a really strange one for us, Lee, I feel, because it's a constant tale of one player doing the work that the other one doesn't want to do, so that the other one can then do the thing that they do best. It just didn't work today, but we're missing Isaac Hayden. It's clear to see, but the question is, where's our ginger hero, Matty Longstaff?
It's Bruce's paying lip service to the fact that the club's desperate to keep him. If the club's that desperate to keep Matty Longstaff, which they claim they are, you don't start, as Clark says, a ball-playing centre-half in midfield ahead of Matty Longstaff. Simple as. Matty Longstaff must be sat on the bench thinking, you want to keep me, so why are you playing a centre-half in midfield when you've got me sat on the bench? It doesn't make any sense. But how much does Matty Longstaff look like my paper boy from when I was living in Walker?
That's what he was doing today.
It's unreal.
He couldn't get to the game. He was busy delivering the Chronicle round. That was the problem. I mean, it's insulting that he comes on so late against Manchester City in a 5-0 defeat where he can do nothing on the game. You want a game where you want like a young lad to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. We see it time and time again, just to have someone who wants to be there. Roberto, do you think that the Matty Longstaff debacle is just going to end in tears? Do you think it's going to be something which never gets resolved and he just moves on?
I mean, it kind of looks that way. I mean, like you mentioned, why would you play a ball-playing defender as your center defensive midfielder? It just doesn't work well. And I think with someone like Matty Longstaff, who has already shown to be a revelation, has demonstrated that kind of flair and quality, and obviously, someone that was grown in the academy and wants to play, you can rely on players like that in situations like what happened today. And unfortunately, because of this whole contract stalling, it just seems incredible that something like this could happen. I think for such a talented young player, and I understand that Newcastle want to keep him as best as they can because of how much value that he could eventually come to. But I think now with someone that's just starting in their first professional season, I believe, it's like, you need to use it to the advantage. And unfortunately, it's something like this that I think a lot of people, and maybe a lot of people at Newcastle, are going to regret if it does go the way of him departing.
Yeah, it's a awful situation. I feel sick of my stomach every time I think about it. What is it about Longstaff? I know we're going to turn it into the Matty Longstaff podcast again here, but it's what is it about Matty Longstaff that we like so much, besides the fact that he's a local lad, Clark?
Well, obviously there is that factor. There's the fact he's played alongside his brother. You've got the whole Shola and Sammy kind of affection towards them with that. He's got an eye for goal. He can get forward. He's got that good work ethic. I still think he's nowhere near the finished article. I think he's looked a little bit like a rabbit in the headlights sometimes when he's played in midfield. Against Chelsea away this season, he didn't have the greatest of games, kept getting bypassed. But I mean, that'll come with time if he's given the game time, which he should be given. I don't know if he's struggling with injuries or anything like that, or that's why he's not being risked. But if he's in the squad and he's the only viable midfield option, because Bentaleb probably deserved to be dropped.
Well, it's interesting about Bentaleb, Bentanol, thanks, should we say. The substitutions were quite strange, Lee. Can you get your head around them at all? We had Bentaleb and Kraft, I believe, come on for Gale and Danny Rose.
Well, at the time that change was made, I genuinely thought Bentaleb would have been a better option than Shah, because the midfield was being overrun. And Bentaleb, he's had a couple of bad games recently. He has shown he can do a job sitting in front of the back four. So it didn't make a great deal of sense. Shaw and Shelby were just too similar. They both want to get on the ball, and they both want to spray 30, 40-yard passes out to the wings, and you can't have two midfielders so similar sat in there. So for me, the change would have been Bentaleb for Shaw. The Kraft one, Kraft really, really pissed me off with about 4 minutes left, I'll be honest with you. When he had that header from the edge of the area and he runs back towards the halfway line, chuckling away to himself. I'm sorry, we're losing 2-1. It's not a laughing matter. As daft as that sounds, as a Newcastle fan, I don't want to see one of our players having a laugh and a giggle, 2-1 down with 5 minutes left. Yeah, for me, that's disrespectful to the shirt. And I might be blowing things out of all proportion, but he hasn't done enough to warrant getting away with that since he joined the club.
Yeah, I'm just glad that it's the surname which gets mentioned on Twitter and people aren't telling Emile to piss off at any point, because that would be damaging, to be honest. We had another penalty in there, not Newcastle getting one, unfortunately. We conceded another one, but do you think Manquillo was just absolutely careless in that one, Roberto?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can't have someone like that go all aggressive and go sloppy. I mean, it's weird because, you kind of want to value Manquillo in some way. I mean, he hasn't had the best of season either, but as your defender, obviously you can't concede a penalty like that. I think it's not needed, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And it's the man like Troy Deeney that can save your team from relegation. Who's our Troy Deeney, Clark? Do we have a Troy Deeney in our ranks? Not necessarily who scores, but that type of player that they will do the job.
Way. Obviously, Lascelles in terms of the leadership that Troy Deeney would have, but in terms of like the raw aggression and passion, probably Richie. That's probably the closest we have to something like that. But obviously, Richie doesn't always have the greatest of games himself. So maybe we don't. Luckily, we're already safe. So.
Lee shaking his head there. I mean, I guess you could say if Andy Carroll was the player that he was without injuries, then hands down he would be the guy. Lee, have you
Andy Carroll?
Lee, have you got anything to add to that? I know
if matches lasted 10 minutes each way, Andy Carroll. Yeah, but unfortunately, matches last 45 minutes each half. Andy Carroll's the closest thing we've got to Deeney, but you can't get a full game out of Andy Carroll.
Yeah,
you can't.
So get him on penalties.
Wasn't in the squad today either, was he?
No, he's injured, isn't he?
Injured again.
Yeah, as soon as he signs his new contract, he's injured.
It's when he took the beard off. I'm a theory
That's what's done
that.
it. Yeah.
He lost the beard and all of his strength, his immune system just went down. His bones got really, I don't know. There's many reasons about it. Lee, just a quick mention. The people talking about the referee, Craig Paulson's had his critics over the last few weeks, I guess. Newcastle, he's refereed a couple. But do you think it was quite harsh that Newcastle were getting so penalised and yet Watford weren't?
I must admit, I mean, the fact that you mentioned Paulson surprised me. I don't think he did a great deal wrong today. I don't think he did a great deal. I'm the first one to call out a referee if I think they're having a stinker, but I finished watching that game and thought, and I never gave a second thought to Paulson, which tells me that nothing that he's done's been jumping out as being one-sided or given. It was a very bitty first half. Lots of daft free kicks, players going down too easily, but nothing untoward for me. The two penalty decisions he got spot on. He took his time, made the right decisions. So no, I don't think he did anything untoward.
Yeah. Well, it's so difficult when we do lose, and it was near an impossible against Manchester City, so much so that we actually picked the worst player. But I always like to try and pick a star man. I guess that we might all have a different one for this one. But Roberto, I'll start with you. Is there anyone who you can pick out? He's going to pick his mate here.
No, I won't. I thought, yeah, he was all right, but he was, and I guess,
tough one, isn't it?
I guess for the goal, you have to give Gale. I mean, it's so difficult. Even Dubravka, I mean, obviously you can't really fault him for the 2 penalties. I mean, anyone could go in that, but yeah, I think it's either him and maybe Gale for the goal, but it's so difficult if I had to choose between those.
It's a tough one, especially when we can't pick San Maximan so easily. But Clark, who you going for today with the best performance?
I'd say it's one of them where, like, if you can't think of someone, you usually give it the goal scorer. But I quite still enjoyed watching San Maximan as I always do. He had a few little moments, nothing amazing, but I'd probably still go with Gale.
Yeah, Lee, what you having there?
I've just been sat racking my brains. I can't think of one. I literally cannot give a Newcastle player today a man of the match performance because I don't think anybody stood out. So Maximan's second half was non-existent. Yeah. He was just totally out of the game second half. Tell you what we'll do. We'll give it to the Newcastle coach, who's undoubtedly called Steve, who held up the substitution boards because he did that really well.
Just a shame about the subs, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm being wrong here, but I think just for what bits I saw, I felt like Shelvey was working today. I don't know if he didn't necessarily do much going forward, but he did look like he was getting amongst it. We sometimes complain that Shelvey sits back and doesn't really do much. And whilst the attacking options weren't there, he did seem to be getting in and around the box when Watford were pressing in the later stages of the first half. So I'd be tempted to go for him, but I think there was a great save from Dubravka, and I think that if it wasn't for him, it's the type of thing where you think that the score would be much higher, and if it weren't for the 2 penalties, then fair enough. But it is a tough one, isn't it, guys? I'm afraid. So I think I've made
clearance as well. Yeah. It was popping into my head.
Well, yeah, I mean, Lascelles is another interesting one because of the shouts he was giving the players, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have to just leave that. That
Can I just ask Emil, how much does Will Hughes look like Alfred's stepdad?
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Yeah. Again, another one that's probably flying over a few heads here. Roberto, do you know who that is?
No.
I was going to say. No, right. You are Google Steptoe if you do wish. But yeah. There was, you know what? I don't know what was brightest actually. I'll ask you, Clark. Was it the Newcastle orange kit? Was it Watford's home kit, or was it Will Hughes' hair?
Probably Will Hughes' hair. I'll go with that. Yeah.
Do you think it's a look that you could maybe pull off one day?
I mean, I've got the hair colour for it. I don't think I've quite got the brightness. I might need some more time in the sun, or maybe some bleach or something.
Yeah, go for the M&M Slim Shady kind of look.
I'd definitely pull off a Stan. Yeah, why not?
I like that. Roberto, I've got to ask. I noticed that a certain song is flying up the charts in Paraguay. What's happened to this? I don't know if anyone hasn't seen it yet. On Spotify, a weird rap album has turned up about Newcastle United, where you've got songs about Almiron Sheikh. Clark, you need to hear this, man.
I haven't seen this. I've been aware.
It is sensational. I don't know what's his name? Is it Mick C or something like that? There is a guy who's done a full rap album. It's a bit like grime, but about the current Newcastle squad.
Is he Swedish?
Yeah, he is.
Is he Swedish?
Isn't he? Yeah.
So we've got a Swedish Newcastle fan, which has slowly been working its way up the charts in Paraguay with a song about Miguel Almiron. How has this happened, Roberto?
It's a weird one, really, because let's just say grime isn't as popular in Paraguay, so this was kind of weird. But yeah, I think this song, I think it made its popularity because Miguel's wife, Alexa, was playing it when he scored his goal. You know how it is, like posting on Instagram stories of the goals, and then the music in the background. Then all his friends were doing it. Then all his family members were doing it. And it just rose off from there. And then, obviously social media plays a part. And then when people in Paraguay talk about it more, it goes in. And let's just be fair, it's easy to be viral in Paraguay nowadays. It's a small. Let's just
we need to be doing more in Paraguay.
Yeah, exactly. If you were to talk about Miguel Almiron, Emil, I'm pretty sure you'd probably hit number one in Paraguay.
Who was the last Paraguayan that played for Newcastle before Miggy?
I know it.
Okay. Gavilan, right? Diego Gavilan.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't it. Oh no, is it not Acuna?
Acuna was
Chilean.
Oh, Chilean.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Gavilan.
Yeah, Gavilan.
Barrowhead, I think.
And we've got such a list of great Paraguayans who've played for Newcastle. I remember them all vividly. But yeah, no, that's amazing. A Swedish rapper. I'm still amazed at the fact that Miguel Almiron has got a wife called Alexa, because that means he's saying, Alexa, play my song. Who goes for it? There was one bit I was going to put in here, which I've had to cross out. I think I jumped the gun a bit, but I was starting to think that orange was our lucky kit, Lee. I mean, do you think that this is a colour that we need to keep for the future, bar this game? We seem to have had some good moments in orange over the years.
We have. We're thinking about West Brom, Bournemouth, obviously, of the week. And for me, we've got to go back. We've got to go back to a yellow shirt.
The
yellow shirt, blue shorts. What we won at Old Trafford in. Playing like Brazil, Kabay, and what have you. But I mean, early 80s, we had the yellow shirt with the green. The yellow shirt for me has got to be the kit we go for. Once we get the oil money.
Yes, yeah, of course. That's what we must get that money. Must get that sorted. Put that on your to-do list, please, Premier League. I mean, yellow it's Liam O'Brien, isn't it? Am I right in thinking? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Clark, I'll come to you with this one. Villa are going down.
The 7 points adrift currently, so that's one silver lining for us. So I'm happy with that.
What is it about?
I think they're playing today.
I'm not sure. I don't really.
Tomorrow they play tomorrow.
It's not like they're living rent free in our heads. But what is it that pisses us off so much about Villa?
When we went down, the sign just, I don't know. The on Twitter they're always at us. It's just, I just don't like them. I'm not going to hold back and be on the fence. I just don't like them.
What they did in 2009 when we got relegated was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
We never had any bad feeling with them, and the amount of pleasure that they took in sending us down. It was just out of the blue. It was because we've never had any rivalry, and things like that stick. I want to see the fella who created that Sob on the Time banner. I want to see him on one of these calls.
Oh, right.
You've got to get him on one of these calls.
I was worried what you were going to say when you said, I want to see that guy. And I was like, I was wondering where that guy was about to go. He's going to incite a riot at his house later just by Lee having a go.
But no, it was unnecessary what they did in 2009. It was.
Yeah, Roberto, just looking at the bottom of the table now in the Premier League now, do you think this is it, given that West Ham won 4-0 today, Norwich have already gone? Do you think that the two that are there in Bournemouth and Villa, it's just impossible?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at how, and it's kind of interesting because, it's been such a tight race so far, and, even with West Ham and even Watford as well, we're battling it out. But, I think what happened with Norwich, obviously they're relegated now. I think Bournemouth won't have enough points to catch up, and I think Aston Villa will go down as well to the light of all you guys.
Yeah, get following the Championship Twitter account again. We've got another game coming up, unfortunately, which could end in tears, but it's going to be against in and out of form Tottenham club. We're going to be back at home. So
good record against Mourinho.
Well, Mourinho at St James's Park has a good track record of coming good for us. But how do you think that game's going to go? Do you think that we can respond from these two?
Well, they haven't looked up to much recently either. 0-0 draw with Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth scored 2 goals late on in the game that got disallowed.
Just unlucky for them, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah. I mean, we're obviously not exactly in great form ourselves. Say a draw.
A draw for that one, yeah.
Yeah.
I think myself and Andy kind of verged on a draw, but then we talked ourselves into actually winning that one. However, we did say draw for Watford. So I don't know. Newcastle can find results in the most unlikely of places, but just Roberto, do you think that now safety's confirmed, we are just done for the season, like the players as well?
I mean. You got to finish your season. I mean, you can't just lay low and just say, all right, guys, let's just whatever happens. Safety's already obvious, but you want to finish the season strong in any way. I mean, you don't want to make those comparisons as well to seasons before. It's not the way to go. I mean, even at the start, the objective, or at least the expectation, was that this team was going to fight for relegation and whatnot, but. You got to give credit when credit's due, I guess, and also you have to give criticism when it is due. So at the same time, just finish the season, see how you do, and that's it. That's all you can really ask for, I think. As simply put.
It's interesting. I think that kind of would sum up Newcastle under Mike Ashley fighting for relegation. We're constantly trying to go down. I wanted to finish on a bit of a nice note. Very sad news that we woke up today to former manager and fellow Geordie Jack Charlton passing away. Lee, unfortunately, you're the only person here who I think might have any memories of Jack Charlton fondly. Is there anything that stands out in your mind of that man?
I mean, I was going to Newcastle games when Charlton was manager. He always had a tough gig because Charlton took over Newcastle the season after Keegan retired. And the season after Arthur Cox left us. His football wasn't fantastic, but he stood by it. He believed in it. He didn't last long. He wasn't the sort of football Newcastle fans wanted. But listen, the bloke was a legend, wasn't he? He said it how it was. He believed in what he did. He's a Geordie, so obviously he's going to be a big, big loss. But let's not look at his spell at Newcastle through rose-tinted spectacles. It wasn't a good spell. It wasn't widely accepted, but obviously he will be a big, big loss to the North East and the football in general.
Yeah, well, he's got that World Cup campaign with Ireland at least, which has got the memories in that one as well, but maybe not the Newcastle games. Lads, I think that's all we can do. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already, click that button because it's always worth seeing what pops up on the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. Cheers, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, Neil. See you guys.
See you.